Meghan Markle being blocked by Dior wasn't some quiet behind-the-scenes misunderstanding. It was one of those industry decisions that shakes the walls without saying a single word. People inside fashion didn't act surprised. They actually nodded like, well, what did you expect? Because the rumors had been swirling for years. Dior isn't a brand that does petty drama. You know that. They dress queens, real royalty, international icons, women whose names echo through history. For them to outright shut a door, that means the situation wasn't small. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't a misplaced email. It was a decision made with full intention. No contact, no collaboration, no requests, no association, period. Fashion insiders said they wanted peace, not confusion. They wanted elegance, not chaos. Because with Meghan, drama followed like a shadow, stories about borrowed gowns that somehow never returned, shoots where items mysteriously vanished, and whispered warnings that were brushed off for years until one green dress changed everything. It started innocently enough. A Variety magazine shoot, a lovely soft green designer gown, a typical styling day, the kind celebrities do every week. Nothing scandalous, nothing loud. Yet when the shoot wrapped, the gown that had been loaned, not gifted, not purchased, not cleared, was missing. No paperwork, no approval. Nothing. And normally, fashion houses let things go. Mistakes happen, people forget, but then, like a plot twist in a movie, Meghan popped up wearing that exact dress again 3 whole years later. The moment that picture hit the internet, the entire fashion world froze. That wasn't just oops, we forgot. That was a receipt. A loud, unavoidable, in-your-face receipt that brought every old whisper back to life, stylists murmured. Oh, not again. Designers remembered their frustrations. Assistants who once shrugged things off suddenly went, I knew it. Because, according to insiders, this wasn't a one-off accident. It was a pattern, a behavior, a reputation that had been quietly building behind closed doors. And the moment that green dress reappeared, everything they had pushed aside suddenly became real. The fashion world is small, they talk, they warn each other, they share experiences, and this time, they weren't whispering. They were connecting dots. Brand managers remembered ignored emails. Stylists remembered advising teammates, don't lend her anything. Assistants recalled lookbooks mysteriously disappearing. And then there was Dior, a house that doesn't just dress royalty, but practically defines royalty. For Dior to finally say no more was monumental. They'd heard the rumors from other labels. They'd watched the inconsistencies. They saw the PR risk. They saw the unpredictability, and they wanted none of it. When Dior shuts the door quietly, you can believe the entire industry hears the lock click. But the truth is, this pattern didn't start in London or Montecito. It didn't even start in Hollywood. It goes all the way back to Toronto on the set of a simple Reitman's commercial shoot. Meghan walked in warm, charming, confident the way she always does. But when the shoot ended, the wardrobe team noticed something strange. Some dresses were missing. A pair of Aquazzura Very Matilda heels vanished. A whole bundle of clothing seemed to have walked off without signing out. At first, the wardrobe coordinator brushed it off as a mix-up. Assistants misplace things all the time, right? Except months later, when Meghan stepped out for her royal engagement announcement wearing those exact missing Aquazzura heels, the puzzle suddenly solved itself. Those shoes weren't misplaced. They weren't forgotten. They were taken. And when Meghan was asked about it, insiders say her response was stunningly casual. She didn't want the items she wore floating around on eBay. She claimed she was too famous for that, but people in the industry wondered if she didn't want them resold, why didn't she buy them? Why didn't she request them officially? Why not follow the standard process everyone else uses? That Reitman's incident quietly spread through stylist circles and became an early warning. Be careful, things disappear around her. Then came Kensington Palace, where fashion rules aren't suggestions, they're law. Every royal woman follows them. No freebies, no unlogged gifts. No accidental keepsakes. Everything is strictly controlled to avoid scandals. But according to insiders, Meghan arrived with a Hollywood mindset: brands should be honored if a celebrity wears their clothes. She allegedly started requesting designer gifts, which was strictly forbidden. Palace staff tried explaining the rules gently, but Meghan pushed back, insisting exceptions existed and she deserved some too. That was when the palace realized the wardrobe issue wasn't going to be a small hiccup. It was becoming a full-blown problem. And when Meghan officially became a working royal, Prince Charles was responsible for funding her wardrobe. But then came the shock. Catherine spent around £100,000 on clothing for an entire year: tours, events, appearances, everything. Meghan, her wardrobe costs exploded to nearly £1 million in that same time frame. 10 times more than Catherine, with fewer engagements. Designers began calling the palace asking when their items were being returned, items that should have been logged, tracked, and accounted for. Things weren't adding up. So Charles gently tried discussing it with her, hoping for clarity, hoping for understanding. But insiders say Meghan didn't appreciate it at all. She felt criticized, controlled, misunderstood, and that conversation widened a crack that would only grow deeper. Meanwhile, fashion houses continued whispering. That pattern kept repeating. Requests came in, items went out, but returns didn't always happen. And designers, don't forget, they protect their creations. They protect their relationships, and they absolutely protect their reputations. Once you become the risky celebrity, doors close quietly but permanently. And Dior closing its door wasn't the end, just the most powerful symbol of a long building problem. And then comes the question everyone asks: why would Meghan do this? Why take things when she can afford anything? She lives in a mansion worth millions. She has Netflix deals. She has brand power, fame, wealth. So why? Fashion insiders all say the same thing. It wasn't about money. It was about entitlement. A mindset that wearing a designer's piece was already payment enough. That her fame alone was a form of currency. That rules didn't apply to someone with her image. In Hollywood, maybe that attitude gets tolerated. In royalty, absolutely not. In the fashion world, only if you return things. But when those worlds collided with Meghan at the center, the fallout spread everywhere through palace corridors, designer studios, PR meetings, and eventually the public eye. And once Dior silently stepped back, the rest of the industry didn't need explanations. They saw the green dress. They remembered the Toronto shoes. They remembered requests that didn't align with royal rules. They remembered stylists refusing to lend pieces. They remembered designers hesitating. And finally, they connected the pattern: missing items, ignored protocols, skyrocketing wardrobe budgets, and a belief that rules didn't apply. And that's how a single green dress, one that vanished from a variety shoot and reappeared 3 years later, ended up becoming the final spark that exposed an entire hidden pattern. A pattern that fashion houses whispered about behind closed doors. A pattern the palace struggled to manage. A pattern that ultimately pushed Dior, the House of Queens, to draw a line. And when Dior draws a line, everyone notices. But the craziest part, the moment Dior stepped away, other brands suddenly became brave enough to whisper what they had held in for years. One stylist said it perfectly: Dior wasn't blocking her, Dior was saying what we all were too scared to admit. And that's when you realize this whole thing wasn't about a dress at all. It was about trust, image, behavior, the way someone treats things that don't belong to them, the way someone reacts when told no. Because industries, especially fashion, remember everything. They remember who respects the system and who breaks it. They remember who returns pieces and who treats a loan like a gift. They remember who makes their lives easier and who leaves chaos behind. And with Meghan, chaos wasn't an occasional accident. It became a pattern people tiptoed around to avoid looking dramatic. But patterns don't vanish just because people stay silent. They grow, they repeat, and eventually they spill into the open. The green dress was simply the moment the fashion world stopped pretending. Some Insiders even said that when people tried to address the issue with her privately, Meghan acted like she was being attacked, like she was above these petty concerns. She reportedly brushed things off, acted offended, or shifted the blame. And every time that happened, the fashion world tightened. It circled just a little more. Because designers don't want to feel used. They don't want to chase celebrities for returns. They don't want their pieces appearing without credit, permission, or paperwork. And Dior? They simply had enough. Enough mixed signals, enough inconsistency, enough of being associated with someone whose reputation was becoming harder and harder to defend behind the scenes. Forget the palace, forget Hollywood. Dior's silent block was the clearest message yet. This behavior isn't fashion forward, it's reputation destroying. And once a brand like Dior says no, the industry listens. It always does.